Oh, wow, really good crowd today. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So, good afternoon or good morning if you're on the West Coast. Really appreciate everyone taking the time to tune in today for our webinar on maximizing year-end generosity. We'll share the ways to unlock bigger gifts before Giving Tuesday, which is less than 2 weeks away. Eek! So, we know this has been a very busy year for everyone, and we appreciate you tuning in today to hear from myself and my partner, Casey Harden, about ways where we can help enable your organization to not only receive these major gifts, but how to maximize them in giving season and beyond. Because here's the thing, we've seen firsthand at Infinite Giving the power of these gifts, whether it's one of our nonprofit clients who received over 20 stock gifts during giving season alone last year. We'll actually share that data with you later in the session. Or if you're just getting started learning how to accept stock gifts, we can share the tactics and strategies that have worked to not only receive these gifts, but steward them well. So let's start off with some introductions. I'm Lauren Patrick. I'm the head of marketing here at Infinite Giving, and I am joined today by Casey Harden. So, Casey, you want to give your intro?
Absolutely. Thanks, Lauren. Hi, everyone. I'm Casey. I'm the head of growth and client success at Infinite Giving. I've been on the Infinite Giving team for over a year and a half now, and I found Infinite Giving because of needing to accept a stock gift for a donor as the treasurer of a board that I sit on. So I had tried Fidelity, Schwab, and E-Trade with no luck because we weren't a big enough organization, didn't have enough funds to invest. And so after months and months of that process, I did a quick Google search, found Infinite Giving, did an intro call with our CEO back then was doing all of them, and pitched her my resume right after the call because I liked the product so much, loved what Infinite Giving is trying to solve, which is democratizing these financial tools for nonprofits. And I was hired a couple weeks later and been here ever since.
Thanks, Casey. So I've learned a ton, y'all, working with Casey over the last year. Like she mentioned, she's a nonprofit treasurer, so she's seen these things firsthand. We also have a portfolio of hundreds of nonprofit clients, ranging from small animal rescues all the way up to some of our nation's largest national parks. So what you're about to hear from me and Casey are things that we've actually seen firsthand on what's worked well for our clients. So Casey, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Lauren. So as you can see here, just to give you a little bit of high-level overview on asset giving before we dive in to some questions and answers. Just starting out, asset gifts tend to be significantly larger than your standard just cash or card and bank payment gifts. So if you want to go to the next slide, actually, there's some stats on the actual numbers around that. So the average cash gift in the US is just $128, but the average stock gift is actually over $8,000. Our average stock gift last year was actually over $30,000. As you go down the list, crypto is even larger, DAF's even larger than that, around 12K. So while asset giving is less common, you're not going to get as many. The volume is going to be lower. It is significantly more impactful. Typically 60 to 100 cash donors to make up your average stock donor donation. So this is also because most wealth is held in assets, not checking accounts. So why do we talk so much about stock and crypto gifts? They are one of the most tax efficient ways to give, hands down. When a donor gives appreciated assets, instead of selling them first, they can save up to 37% in capital gains tax. That's money which would have gone to the IRS, but instead goes directly to your mission. So we'll talk more about the biggest tax benefits in just a moment, but this is what makes non-cash giving such a powerful tool for generosity. Your supporters can give more at no additional cost to them, actually at savings to them, simply by choosing the most tax smart asset. And in a year like this, with markets high and many people are holding appreciated assets, this is one of the easiest ways for donors to maximize their impact immediately by taking advantage of those tax benefits. So, as we mentioned, most donors' assets are not held in cash. They are held in non-cash. If you think of your own personal finances, typically we've got a smaller amount in our checking account. We need that for paying our mortgage and our bills. The money is hard to let go of. We need it liquid and we need it now. But a lot of us have other funds that are invested in the market. They're getting a passive return. It's a bigger 90% bucket of the average donor's funds. And so once you switch the conversation to targeting that 90% bucket, it can really change the game around how you're having these fundraising conversations. So that you can kind of flip the script and talk about a different way of giving and target those high worth donors who are, who have accountants who are telling them, you've got to give assets, you can't give cash, like we got to do something for your taxes. They're going to be wanting them to give assets. So non-cash giving is growing. As you can see, here's just some more numbers around it. Non-cash charitable contributions increased 135% in the last decade. Nonprofits that receive stock gifts in addition to cash raise 55% more overall. And again, your donors can avoid paying up to 37% in capital gains taxes when giving appreciated stock. So that's a win-win. Again, more for your mission and more savings for your donor ends up equaling just higher gifts. So today we'll talk about how to understand and ask for these highly tax efficient gifts like stocks, crypto, and DAFs, and how to make them easy for donors to give. So before we jump into that, it leads me to a customer example. If you want to go to the next slide, Lauren. So this is how one Infinite Giving client received 20 individual stock gifts last December. So this is a real example from one of our most successful nonprofits in regards to stock gifting. So they were able to actually bring in, again, over 20 stock gifts just in the giving season alone last year. So here's the actual donation data from our platform. This organization does a fantastic job continuing to educate their donors, who they call their giving partners, all year about the benefits of donating assets, specifically in regards to the tax benefits. So when year end came around, they were able to see this success because of the education they'd done with their donors. The numbers really speak for themselves. They received more than $660,000 in stock gifts in 1 year for a total of 76 stock gifts. And they also received another 190,000 in card and bank payment donations, all through their campaign widget. I also want to call out something important here for teams who are already accepting stock gifts, but doing this manually. You know about the issues that can happen with matching donors to their stock gifts if you don't have a system like Infinite Giving in place. We've heard horror stories of stock gifts getting lost or forgetting to liquidate and a gift losing thousands of dollars in value if you're not using technology to streamline this process. So that's two of the main problems we set out to solve. And we also basically just wanted to make non-cash giving as frictionless as possible for your biggest supporters, but also for your internal teams as well, so that you all aren't having to manage this process, but you've got a fiduciary in place to do it for you. And just so you know, around those numbers, just for a second, that is an organization that is a statewide organization. So this isn't like one of the, biggest like national as far as like, so just to put some context around that, they did this well while being a state specific run nonprofit.
That's a really good call out, Casey. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So tax benefits, that's one of the big areas we're going to focus on today around this because it is one of the biggest drivers of why asset gifts are booming in popularity and why they are so impactful for your organization. This is where educating your giving partners about the benefits of donating appreciated assets really comes into play. So we've outlined here the three biggest tax benefits for why donors should consider donating stock versus cash. So first, again, by donating stock, you are eliminating the capital gains tax on appreciated securities. I actually, unfortunately, recently heard from one nonprofit that had a donor that ended up liquidating their stock and giving the nonprofit cash, which was actually quite bad for the donor because now they are going to have to pay capital gains tax on that appreciated stock, as well as missing out on a second tax benefit, which is the fact that they also get a full value deduction for the current market value of that gift. So that means they can, if they had given the stock, they would have been able to increase their impact by 30 to 50% just by giving a pre-tax gift instead of liquidating it first. So we try to help nonprofits educate donors about the tax benefits ourselves as well. That is going to be, again, one of the biggest areas where you can be impactful with your fundraising conversations, is just talking about these tax benefits because it is so much better for your donor at the end of the day, and then they can make a bigger impact with your mission, which is, of course, hopefully always the goal for our donors. So something important to note, some of these tax rules are changing for 2026 with OBBB, and we recently published a blog post on this topic. In the blog, which we're putting the link in the chat right now for, Lauren's going to drop that in there. We also included examples of language to communicate to your giving partners about why they should make their gifts now in 2025 instead of waiting until next year when that bill goes into place. So you may just want to check out that link and review that material.
Thanks, Casey.
Absolutely. So to recap on the three ways to unlock bigger gifts this giving season, basically first start thinking about your donors as giving partners. This is a language shift that will also help your supporters to just feel the love. And again, talking to them about giving partners is just, it's more of kind of a long-term view into how they help support your organization. Start to have one-on-one conversations about asset giving, specifically the potential tax benefits of giving assets like stock versus cash. And communicate regularly with your supporters about more ways to give. We offer our clients emails and social media templates, things like that, to help educate them. And that's going to, again, be one of the biggest drivers of getting more of these gifts. So, remember, you can leverage technology like infinite giving to make non-cash giving a seamless process for you and your team and your giving partners.
Good. There we go.
Awesome. So Q&A. I'll hand it over.
Q&A. Yep. All right, everybody. So, Casey, that was an awesome overview. Thank you for getting us started with some good context for today's conversation. So, I know y'all have questions that you want answered about how do you get started? What are tactics that you've seen work well for asking for these asset gifts from your donors? We do have a couple of questions that have already come in, so I'll pitch those to Casey first. But keep the questions coming using this Q&A module that's in the bottom of your Zoom dashboard. All right,
Perfect.
Casey, I'll start with the first question, which is actually one of the most important things of this process and something that I didn't know before I got to Infinite Giving, despite being on nonprofit boards, working with development teams. Talk to me about a brokerage account. Why do you need one to get started?
Yeah, good question. So before we kind of dive into that, let me sort of flip the usual framing. A lot of times, nonprofits are waiting for donors to bring up stock gifts, and then they're going and scrambling and trying to figure out how to do it. So before, basically, you want to ask whether your organization is ready before the donor is asking for it. So you want to get all of your processes and tools in place. So when your donors come asking, you are ready. And also, so you can attract other donors that may not even be in your sphere of donors yet because you're not offering asset gifts, which high worth donors are only wanting to give a lot of the time. With our high worth donors, we've got to think about the fact they typically have an accountant behind the scenes, and that accountant is going to be telling them you've got to gift assets. It's so much better for your taxes. Can't be gifting huge gifts in cash. So that is where those high worth donors, if you're not offering those options, they may give you a smaller gift in cash, but they're taking their big dollars elsewhere via assets because they simply have to for tax purposes. So when it comes to an actual brokerage account, a brokerage account is what you need in order to be able to accept stock gifts. Stocks are transferred through what's called the DTC transfer system. You don't need to know all of that. All it means, though, is that they are transferred between brokerage firms. So when your donor wants to give a stock, they are sending the stock from their brokerage firm to the brokerage account that you hold with Infinite Giving as a nonprofit. For example, if you were to work with us. And so once we receive that stock gift into your brokerage account, we are liquidating that stock gift, making it into just cash funds that we are depositing into your bank account, for example. So that's how the process works. We then issue a receipt for the donor. You're good to go. So on your end, you're just getting those cash funds, and there's nothing to do around the process. But back to the brokerage accounts, that's why you need a brokerage account in place. You cannot accept stock gifts without them. So that is the first step that you're going to need to solve as an organization is getting a brokerage account open, knowing how to receive the assets into that account, liquidating them properly and appropriately at time of receipt, and then providing the accurate, accessible documentation for your accounting and audit purposes and for your donor. So if any of these pieces are missing, unfortunately, even, your most generous donors that really want to give, they can lose trust very quickly. If you don't have this process in place and really ironed out. I'd say one just kind of anecdotal example of that is in our early days at Infinite Giving, we actually, one of our earliest supporters is a high worth donor who wanted to give about 250,000 in stock to a nonprofit. The organization, they were, DIYing it, basically meaning they did have a brokerage account, but they were just putting on the website, email us for instructions sort of thing, and then kind of going through it with the donor. Unfortunately, through this process, the donor lost confidence that they were going to steward this gift appropriately, liquidate it on a timely manner, reinvest those funds for a passive return till they were needed. So long story short, he actually did not end up gifting to that organization and felt like his funds would have a bigger impact by investing in us. Because he felt like this is what high worth donors really need to have the confidence to send those large gifts, seeing a fiduciary behind the scenes who's going to steward the gift along the way.
Excellent, Casey. And thanks for that anecdotal story. That's one that always resonates with me every time I hear it. We
Yeah.
had a great question come through in the chat while you were talking, and I want to go ahead and answer it because it's so applicable. Do you advise including specific stock transfer instructions on your nonprofit website or advise donors to email directly for those instructions and account numbers? This is actually something our technology does automatically, but I'll let Casey answer that.
Yeah, great question. And that's kind of what I was alluding to with that story just now. So that is what we see a lot of organizations sort of start out their stock gifting journey with. Not a bad way to start, to ascertain whether you've got some interest from donors. That being said, a lot of donors, don't necessarily want to reach out to the organizations they want to gift to. They want to do it more anonymously and just at the time they want to do it. We all know like the more friction you put in place with donors, the more likely you are to lose that gift. And so that is where, again, that, high worth donor who ended up investing in us in the early days, that's where, again, he felt like this would make a big impact because you want to be able to have an easy to give widget where the donor, without contacting your organization, can go ahead and just put in that stock gift pledge, get the details they need, sync up with their broker. We actually provide direct donor and broker support so that you don't have to get involved. Again, just a lot of times donors don't want to kind of have that back and forth with the organization necessarily around, the amount that they're gifting or that sort of thing. So we try to help solve for that.
And then the other piece we're solving for is you don't know if there is a high capacity donor that wants to make that gift. They may never talk to your team, but then actually just go ahead and find that more ways to give page on your website, use our widget and make a big gift. I'm going to share a case study from Washington National Parks that earlier this year they received a surprise stock gift of over $100,000 from a first-time donor. That donor had never talked to their team, just went to their website, clicked more ways to give, and gave a major stock gift, not just once, but they actually came back and made a second donation, right, Casey?
Yeah, they came back and made a $250,000 donation next. It was mass. And so this is all in the span of about a month, again, from a donor that they did not know of. And that really echoes back to that idea that high worth donors are looking for organizations to give to for tax purposes. And so if you make it easy and you put it out there and you make it an obvious, easy process, you could start attracting high worth donors that you weren't even aware of, that you're not even trying to go get.
And
So it
that's a
really
great shift for the next questions we have, which is how do you actually communicate that you have these more ways to give with your donors? So let's dive deeper into those donor communications and the types of things that you should be saying to them. How should a nonprofit be educating its supporters, Casey?
Yeah, great question. Education is it's, in real estate, it's location, location, location. With nonprofits and asset gifts, it is education, education, education. It has to be proactive, not passive. These gifts are so valuable. It is worth investing the time as a fundraising team to work on your education piece, which we try to help with. So if you do work with Infinite Giving, we will offer two-page PDFs on the tax benefits, email templates, 1-minute videos, things like that, things to help get the word out to donors, to help explain how these gifts are beneficial for them. And also then again, so they can make a bigger impact with your mission. So the clients that we see do the best are the ones that are simply talking about this all the time and not shying away from the conversation around asset gifts. The great news is if you are partnering with a company like Infinite Giving, you don't have to be the expert. That's the great part here. You don't need to seem like you know everything around stock gifting or crypto or DAFs because you've hired an expert. You've got a fiduciary behind the scenes doing it for you. So you just need to be able to be comfortable having conversations, bringing it up of, have you heard of stock or crypto giving? Have you heard of DAFs? Are you aware that there are big tax benefits? Might be worth talking to your accountant about it. Or, you can get 37% capital gains tax savings. Let's have a short conversation about that. So just starting to introduce it, starting to just include a widget that has those different giving options on your website, on your, via your QR code at events, on your flyers, what have you, is going to be the quickest, easiest way to just start making it part of your giving culture to bring up those asset gifts and put them out there.
And I want to call out that we have an amazing webinar coming up on December 1st. It is a Monday, and we know it's the day before Giving Tuesday, but it's a great opportunity to have your last minute questions answered about how to have these conversations. And we have an amazing expert joining us for that conversation. Dr. Russell James from Texas Tech University and the founder of encouragegenerosity.com. He'll be logging on to share about how to have conversations with your wealthiest donors because his thesis is that wealthy people love to talk about their wealth. But how do you actually have those strategic conversations so you're not constantly making the ask, but instead thinking about how to make that giving partner relationship over time, thinking of an endowment as a planned gift, not something to leave in a will, but something to start immediately. And that's something that we've seen with these stock gifts. And Casey, I know we'll get to this later about, the stewardship piece, but to get started, how do you actually make that ask in a way that feels organic and authentic and not constantly putting your hand out? So we'll include a link to register for that webinar and our follow-up email as well. All right,
And
we got
I,
one. Go
Oh,
for it.
I was just going to comment on that really quickly. I actually love the timing of that webinar being right before Giving Tuesday because I just wanted to address that I think a lot of nonprofits at this time of the year, Thanksgiving's next week, which is, I would think we can all agree is wild, that is upon us. But I think a lot of them are thinking like it's too late. We've kind of lost our opportunity for this year to get started on this sort of strategy. I want to dispel that myth. It is not too late. We are onboarding organizations literally Christmas week. It is a crazy week for us, actually, because you are going to have donors that are wanting to gift until December 31st for their taxes. We know everybody, a lot of time, last minute thinkers. Uh, I'm sure we have some on the call, including myself, when it comes to certain things. So, that will happen. It is not too late. We can onboard your organization with a 30-minute call, and the accounts are open within 2 to 3 days. And literally just having that campaign page that we give you available to send the link out in an email, put it on your website. December is the busiest stock gifting month. So you can get in place very quickly and still be able to capture even one or two stock gifts, again, at the average $8,000 size gift. Often we see them for 6 and 7 figures even. One can really change the game. So I would just urge you to not have the mindset that it's too late for this giving season, especially because of the rules that are changing with the bill next year, the big, beautiful bill, because donors will get an even bigger tax savings this year than they will next year.
Yeah, thanks for that call out, Casey. And y'all, if you click the first link I dropped in the chat, that is that blog that we referenced. We have 5 different ways to start those giving season conversations with your donors about why give this year. Do not wait for 2026. So check out the language in that blog. I do want to circle back, Casey. Can you share another compelling story about a nonprofit that started asking for these asset-based gifts and the transformation that they saw?
Yeah, I'm trying to now think of the ones that we've shared so far on here just to make sure that I don't kind of call them back. So I know, the one that we shared from the beginning, just the stats on, just to recircle to that for a second, a huge aspect of why they were successful was they have a tax incentive program actually going on in their state. And so they coupled that with stock gifts because of the tax savings. So again, just kind of calling back, so much of this goes back to that tax conversation. We've talked about Washington National Parks, a great one, which shows the importance of just putting the options out there and being able to bring donors to you just from that. And then we have tons of different examples of donors, or sorry, nonprofits and clients who starting from literally $0, up to we work with organizations from $0 in revenue up to, 20, 30 million would what we would consider like our small to mid-sized space that we are trying to serve. And so we see ones that have not even started a fundraising journey yet, but they know the benefits of these type of gifts because they've seen it at another organization or they themselves want to gift assets. And so even if you don't have a big fundraising team or strategy or anything like that yet, getting these tools in place, it's never too early for that. Is basically kind of the point trying to drive home there. So, all of that to say, it's we've seen it change the game for a lot of clients. So we are just really passionate about it.
And one of my favorite stories that I've heard as well is when we were helping one of our clients start an endowment, they had a wealthy supporter who wanted to seed the endowment using four different vehicles. He was giving money from stock, he was doing crypto, a DAF, and a wire transfer. I think we all know which one was probably the hardest, right? Casey, it was the wire transfer.
That or yeah, I was gonna say that or DAF. Sometimes staff providers trying to make it a little bit difficult to get those funds out. But we include DAFs as part of our widget to remind donors if they've gifted to a DAF, consider writing a check from there because they usually are large checks. But yeah, stock and crypto is actually going to be one of the easiest ways compared to DAF or a wire to give.
And let's touch on crypto for a second because we see an increasing number of crypto transactions on our platform, especially with Bitcoin hitting its all-time high of over six figures earlier this summer. We had one donor who actually gave a $300,000 crypto gift, but the average transaction size we've seen of crypto gifts on our platform is $18,000. So that's another piece to think about is communicating to your donors when it comes to non-cash. Think about stocks and crypto. Even a percentage of a Bitcoin has more tax advantages than giving cash.
Yeah, very true. And crypto is definitely on the rise as well, just in popularity. All of our clients that we're onboarding now are all wanting a crypto wallet because it's all the talk. There's a lot of speculation about where crypto is going to go in the next few months. All of that to say, though, your organization, like you do not want your team getting involved with the day in, day out, kind of business of crypto. Crypto fluctuates, as we know, so rapidly that if you get that crypto gift in and your team is not basically staring at the wallet, ready to liquidate it immediately, it can literally lose thousands and tens of thousands of dollars in that time. We do not suggest holding crypto. We suggest liquidating immediately. We've had a client before that wanted to hold it, and their gift actually literally did drop $10,000 within a few hours of receiving it. And we were like, "Are you sure you want to stick with this strategy?" They did want to. All that to say, best practice is always liquidating, and then making sure to get those funds into cash as soon as possible, which also helps your donor realize the contribution that they were sort of expecting. So if they are donating stock or crypto, thinking it will be, worth $50,000, you want to go ahead and get that liquidated before there are massive fluctuations and their gift is now worth less than they intended. That's the idea behind that automatic liquidation.
And then let's talk for a moment about after we liquidate those gifts, what we do with them. If you need that cash immediately, we can get it into your bank account. Like that's not a problem. Where we see the bigger opportunity is to take that cash and put it to work immediately. One of my favorite stories is going back to Washington National Parks because we were already their fiduciary. Once they got those major six-figure gifts, according to the terms they had in their investment policy statement, we immediately put that into short-term reserve. So it was growing at what, like 3% Casey or something like that?
I think higher than that, actually, a lot. So yes, passively getting passive returns on your funds till you need them is your other greatest way to responsibly steward your funds as an organization. Me being on a board, our founders, leaders, all sitting on nonprofit boards, we know that nonprofit boards are very conservative by nature. We need to be, right, as a team, as a group, because these are donor dollars. So mitigating downside risk, preserving capital, and growing conservatively is of the utmost importance. And so a lot of our clients take advantage of our multiple different, very low risk, highly liquid options, things like money market, treasury bills. We have a treasury bill portfolio up over 5.5% year to date. That's entirely US government backed. So very low risk. So, other portfolios beyond that as well. We do stock and bond investing too for longer term, higher growth. But we are always going to be a conservative approach. But yes, you want to get passive return on those funds until you need them. And that's really the best way to make sure that you are making the most of your donors' dollars.
Well said. And I think the other thing that is so interesting is when nonprofits receive these major gifts, if they don't have an IPS in place, it's when they usually come to us and say, what do we do next? And so, I mean, Casey, you get those calls all the time, especially when we have someone who's come to us that week and said, hey, I have this donor who wants me to take this gift now. We can liquidate that for them in a couple of business days and then start putting that money to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no amount of funds you need to wait for before there's a time that it's like, oh, we can now like we are ready to get a return on funds. Um, Even your shortest term cash reserves, like you can be getting a return on those, your operational reserves until you need them. And we can help advise you on that and talk you through based on your full financial picture, what sort of buckets of funds you need for your risk aversions, your goals, all of that.
Yep. And this is something, y'all, that I didn't know before I got to Infinite Giving last year about the different types of reserve funds and that there's actually 6 different types of endowments out there, whether it's a quasi endowment where you can actually have unrestricted access to those funds if you need them liquid, or if you have a restricted endowment that you're truly planning for the long term of 25 years or more. This is something that Infinite Giving can help you get started with. Another one of my favorite success stories is from the Atlanta Land Trust, where they did not have a reserve fund, period. And the new ED came in, they started building that fund, asking their wealthy supporters for these asset gifts, and now they have $1 million in reserves a year later.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I love Amanda. All right, so I do want to close this out with just a couple more slides. So I'm going to share my screen. Sorry, y'all. My drive just decided to not work the way I needed it to. There we go. Mhm. All right, Miss Casey, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, absolutely. So just kind of wrap up here. If anybody on the call is interested in working with Infinite Giving, I would love to have a conversation with you to go over exactly what our donation options look like, how they work. It's really easy to set up, 30-minute call. And again, the brokerage accounts are open in 2 to 3 days. Crypto wallets do take about 2 weeks. If you do have a crypto donor that you know of, that would be the you kind of, make sure you make that decision to get onboarded or not within the next 2 weeks to give them enough time to gift before the end of the year. That being said, working with Infinite Giving, there's a lot of different advantages. So first would be faster account setup. Traditional brokerage accounts take literally 4 to 8 weeks to open, and massive applications, paper applications that you have to mail in typically. We have shorted that to, again, a 30-minute call. You're doing the whole application digitally, and the accounts are ready in 3 days. We have 0% transaction fees for stock gifting and 1% for crypto. This is a massive differentiator in the market. All of the providers that we are aware of charge 3 to 5% on stock and crypto gifts. And again, we charge 0 and 1%. So that's where you're going to have massive savings. We also have nonprofit only expertise. So we focus exclusively on nonprofits. So every tool and service, all of our investment options is designed specifically to support nonprofit missions and donors. We offer concierge support from donor messaging and broker support, board education, post-gift guidance. We are there to help you the full step of the way. And then finally, integrated investment services, which we've touched on today. So we don't just help you receive the gifts, we actually help you to put them work strategically so your funds grow and help serve your mission longer term.
Well said, Casey.
Yeah.
So, y'all, like Casey mentioned, reach out to her, reach out to our support team. We are here to answer any questions that you have ahead of giving season. You can scan this QR code right now to set up some time to talk with our team. We know how hard 2025 has been on everybody, and we're here to help to set you up for success in giving season and beyond. I haven't seen any other questions come through the chat, so reach out to us at any time if you just want to pick our brains, set up a brainstorming conversation, deep dive into our tech, get those templates about how to actually ask for stock gifts. We're here to help because the more nonprofits we have in the world, the better communities we'll build and have a brighter future. So, Casey, thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today. And thank you to everyone for joining, and we'll let you get back to doing your good work. Happy giving season.
Thanks, everyone.